Alan Paton wrote this good and honest book, Cry the Beloved Country, in 1948. His beloved country was South Africa. The book ends with a description of the sun coming up on the beautiful mountains there. Paton wrote, "It is the dawn that has come, as it has come for 1,000 centuries, never failing. But when that dawn will come of our emancipation from the fear of bondage and the bondage of fear, why, that is a secret." When dawn will come in South Africa is still a secret 40 years later. But Billy Taylor's here this morning with news of some young South Africans who are brightening things a little bit. Good morning, Billy.
Good morning, Charles. You know, this is the beginning of Black History Month, and many of us in the black community are very concerned about South Africa as we're concerned about this country. And it's refreshing to note that we can celebrate not only our heroes and heroines, but we can celebrate those supporters who may or may not be black, but who are really doing something very special to bring us to that point of emancipation.
You're talking about Dave Brubeck's son right now.
Right, right. It's an unlikely hero, if you will. I mean, Darius Brubeck is a nice young pianist and composer who, following in his father's footsteps, is making a name for himself as a musician. But he's also doing some remarkable things in South Africa with some students. And as a matter of fact, he brought the students here, and one of the places that naturally they had to go is the place where jazz is supposed to have been born, down in New Orleans.
This is the third largest river in the world, following in size to the Amazon and the Natal River.
There's nothing unusual here. Tourists aboard the Bayou Lafitte, somewhere in the Mississippi River near New Orleans. Tourists doing what tourists do. Nothing unusual in that, except that these young men are musicians. Their names are ordinary names. Johnny Mekoa, Kevin Gibson, Nick Paton, Rick Van Heerden. Nothing unusual in that, except that they're blacks and whites together, and they're all South Africans.
Music has really made things to really open up to people and to their hearts to really come together.
Victor Masondo plays bass.
That's the thing that's going to make them say, look, I'm going to go all the way and do the best I can to take the lower side and reach out for my friend over there.
Masondo and the others call themselves the Jazzanians. They were in the United States recently to play their brand of jazz, to meet American musicians, to learn, and to teach. This session was in a church in Old Greenwich, Connecticut.
They have a specific interest, which is to use the skills and to draw on the traditions of American jazz, but in the service of building up the local idiom, or in enlarging it.
Their leader and teacher is Darius Brubeck, son of jazz pianist Dave Brubeck. Darius Brubeck brought the students to the University of Natal in Durban, South Africa, where he's been teaching for the last 5 years, and where he established the first jazz department at any university in South Africa.
The University of Natal
Johnny Mekoa
doesn't have, you know, that racial barrier. Because, for instance, I stay on campus. My next door room, it's a white student. We're all mixed. You find Chinese, you find Indian, you find coloreds. We're all mixed.
From my experience, white Anglo-Saxon type of background, I'm glad to say that I'm learning some very, very positive things from black society and from black people.
Nick Paton plays soprano and tenor saxophones. His grandfather, Alan Paton, wrote Cry the Beloved Country, an eloquent story about racial injustice in South Africa. Andrew Eagle plays guitar.
Now we're beginning to see again some kind of underground movements towards once again, black and white musicians are mixing much more freely. And there's a lot of exciting new music coming out of that. So when I say I prefer modern music, it's that kind of new synthesis that's emerging.
We heard the students play in Detroit at the annual conference of the National Association of Jazz Educators.
Now, at this time, I'd like to take the pleasure of introducing the members of the Jazzanians. One of South Africa's young top drummers, Lulu Gontsana. Next to me is Zim Nqawana on alto and flute. Then I've got a very close friend of mine, Rick van Heerden on alto and tenor saxophone. Then on piano, it's none other than the beautiful Melvin Peters.
I can listen to that sort of thing all day.
Is he heard?
Oh, Jason Nqawana.
Nice to meet you. Pleasure.
Coming here, it's been a beautiful experience, you know, an eye-opener. I wish I could take this whole building, you know, just carry it onto South Africa and put it there, and then let the arts unfold, you know.
I mean, I think that's what this kind of conference makes us aware of, is how much attention is given to various cultural forms. Mm-hmm. And in South Africa, they're fairly low priority, I think, generally.
Yeah, anything that's too culturally strong, you know, is discouraged. As soon as anything that might challenge the status quo starts forming, and I think jazz is seen, from my perceptions, jazz is seen very much as quite a progressive music, and so the structure of things as they are kind of militates against progressive culture.
Do you see yourselves individually as able to change that in any way?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like this is the beginning of things to come. Yeah, because we're changing, so, you know, we're changing ideas, you know, and we're learning, you know, our different ways of living, you know, culturally and otherwise.
The University of Natal is one of 5 open universities in South Africa, open equally to blacks and whites. But even there, the burden on blacks is greater.
With black students especially, the big issue is money, but that also relates to disadvantaged background in many respects in terms of the inferior secondary education system. It's very difficult to get scholarships if you don't have good grades, or if you haven't even really finished high school, which in many cases happens because of chronic unrest.
There was time in New Orleans for the Jazzanians to jam with the Dirty Dozen Band, a popular jazz group based in the Crescent City.
I consider it an honor that you even heard of the band, you know, in such a faraway place. I mean, we've been around the world a couple of times. We've never been down your way, and unless certain situations change, we may never. But we'd like to ask you to pull out something and get in.
Clap along, stomp along.
And there was even time for them to have their pictures taken with Louis Armstrong.
Melvin, will you take one of me there too? Okay.
There really are no political boundaries within the group in terms of our thinking. There aren't racial problems. There might be cultural problems, but they're not based on prejudice anymore. It's amazing how a little bit of exposure can break down a lifetime of ignorance.
Then that's where things will start to change. People will start to change automatically because they'll start to realize each other and really sort of face the problems together as friends.
And I think we're all aware that music is not going to radically alter the society. There are deep structural problems in South Africa. But it can kind of offer a model of what it could be like.